So again, we're kind of titling this our specials notes. As we think about the different angles as we go around the unit circle, there are a number of angles that are going to give us special angles. So what we're going to kind of do in these problems is we're going to, number one, understand the concept of what theta is, understand what the concept of alpha is, and then understand how to build a triangle and utilize and find our functional values. So in this first example, we're going to say that theta is equal to 150 degrees. And here's what we want to do. We want to be able to draw the angle, which we've already talked about how to do that. Find alpha and the 6 functional values. When we say 6 functional values, we're talking about sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent. Now, step 1, we're going to draw the picture. Well, we know on our coordinates that this is 0 and 360. Here's 90. Here's 180. Here's 270. So if I'm sketching 150, I'm going to start here, my initial side here at the x-axis. I'm going to go around 90, and then I'm going to go another 60. So if I'm sketching that, it'll look something like this. So this is my theta of 150. Now, when I draw this in, I create a reference angle. Okay, and it's important for us always to be able to find the reference angle. The reference angle is what the rest of that angle is going to the x-axis. So if this is 150, that means my reference angle here is 30 degrees. And that is also, the reference angle is what we're going to call alpha. So we would say in this picture, alpha is 30 degrees. Now, what we're going to do in all these, and the reason we're calling these specials is because these triangles that we're going to build are going to be special right triangles. So notice here, if I drop a vertical here to the x-axis, I now have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. And we talked yesterday and kind of did a little review of our 30, 60, 90s about the ratios in that triangle. So in the 30, 60, 90, we know the ratio is 1 to 2, and then radical 3. So the side opposite the 30 is 1. Side opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse, it's 2, so it's double the side opposite the 30, and then radical 3. Now we're filling this in. This is pretty important. Notice this line here for radical 3 is actually a negative radical 3 because we're going left on the coordinate plane. Now that we've got the triangle built, we're going to then go ahead and find our 6 functional values. So cosine theta, sine theta, tangent theta. And then our reciprocal functions, which are cosecant theta, secant theta. Actually, I've got those backwards. Since I wrote cosine first, cosine actually goes with secant. And then sine goes with cosecant. And tangent's going to be cotangent. Okay, so if I start with cosine, I'm going to go back to my triangle. And again, this is going back to, that's part of the reason why I picked the warm-up today that I did. just a refresher, SOHCAHTOA. This is just right triangle trigonometry. If I know that cosine is ka, adjacent over hypotenuse, well, here's my triangle. The adjacent is negative radical 3, and the hypotenuse is 2. So my cosine is going to be negative radical 3 over 2. I'm going to go ahead and do my secant theta. Now to do the secant theta, remember cosine and secant, sine and cosecant, tangent and cotangent, these are reciprocal functions, which basically means all we have to do is take the reciprocal of our value. So for secant, if I flip it, it is 2 over negative radical 3. Well, I'm not going to leave my negative radical 3 on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and rationalize it by multiplying the top and bottom by radical 3. So this is going to actually become 2 radical 3 over 3. And again, it is negative. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to sine. Sine we know is opposite over hypotenuse. Well, in my picture, opposite is 1, hypotenuse is 2, so that's 1 over 2. Then cosecant, if I do the reciprocal, it's going to be 2. I'm ready to do my tangent. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Well, opposite is 1, adjacent's negative radical 3. So 1 over negative radical 3. Again, I'm not going to leave the radical on the bottom. That's going to become, looks like radical 3 over 3. And again, that's going to be negative. And then cotangent, if I take the reciprocal of 1 over negative radical 3, it's just going to be negative radical 3. We're going to do the same thing in example 2, but now we're going to tell you that theta we're going to say is 225 degrees. Again, we're going to draw the angle. Find alpha. And the 6 functional values. Okay, so if we sketch in 225 we know, we go all the way around, here's 180. Here's 270. So I get to 180, and then I'm going to go another 45. So here would be my theta of 225. So notice we're in the third quadrant. I'm going to draw in my triangle. Now my reference angle is my alpha, which is this angle here. Well, this angle here is going to be 45. So we can go ahead and fill in that alpha now is 45 degrees, which creates a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Now, if I fill in my ratio, again, we talked yesterday about the ratio of 45, 45, 90 being 1 radical 2. So this is 1, which is actually negative 1. because, again, I'm going left. This line here, I'm going down, so it's going to be also -1, and then radical 2. Your hypotenuse will always be a positive value when you're creating these triangles. Okay, so now we're going to find sine theta, cosine theta, tangent theta, and secant theta, cosecant theta, cotangent theta. Again, if I'm going to find sine of theta, we know that up here, opposite over hypotenuse. Well, opposite over hypotenuse is -1 over radical 2. Again, I'm not going to leave the radical on the bottom, so it becomes negative radical 2 over 2. My secant, if I take the reciprocal here of my -1 over radical 2, just becomes negative radical 2. And I flip it. For my cosine, that's going to be the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Well, the adjacent again is -1. So again, I'm getting the same value here, which is negative radical 2 over 2. Cosecant's also still going to be negative radical 2. For my tangent, it's going to be opposite over adjacent. That's -1 over -1. Well, -1 over -1 is simply 1. And then my reciprocal of 1 is also 1. So I apologize for that mess up there again. Just remember, the S goes with the C and the C goes with the S. So it should be sine goes with cosecant, cosine goes with secant. It just so happens on this one the values are the same, which that was fortunate that that happened.